You have exactly 24 hours to pack your things, Sloane, and honestly, take the cheap polyester rugs with you. They match your pedigree. My mother-in-law, Evelyn, stood in the center of the marble foyer, a flute of vintage champagne in one hand and a legal-sized envelope in the other. She didn't just hand it to me, she let it drop onto the floor right at the tips of my scuffed sneakers. My husband, Marcus, didn't look up from his phone. He was busy scrolling through listings for a new Porsche, the one he'd been eyeing ever since his father closed, a massive deal that nobody had actually seen any paperwork for. The guest suite is needed for someone who actually adds value to this family's social standing, Evelyn continued, her voice dripping with that practiced, old money condescension. A house sitter was always a temporary arrangement. We've been far too charitable, but even our patience has its limits. I looked at the envelope. It was a formal eviction notice. Signed, sealed, and delivered by the people whose laundry I'd folded, whose groceries I'd budgeted, and whose secrets I'd been keeping for 3 years. They thought I was the liability. The poor girl from a modest zip code who hit the jackpot by marrying into the Sterling family name. To them, I was a glorified servant who happened to share their dinner table, though usually at the far end, away from the important conversations. What they didn't realize was that while they were busy maintaining the image of wealth, I was the one actually looking at the numbers. You see, the Sterlings have a very specific way of living. Everything is leased. The cars, leased. The designer furniture. Rented for staging their social life. Even the jewelry Evelyn wore to the country club was often sitting in a velvet box on a memo from a local jeweler, waiting to be returned the next morning. They lived in a house of cards, and they had just handed me the match. I understand, Evelyn, I said quietly, my voice devoid of the shaky emotion she was clearly hoping for. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just picked up the envelope. 24 hours, I'll be out by noon tomorrow. Marcus finally looked up, a smirk playing on his lips. Don't be dramatic, Sloane. We'll pay for a week at a motel. It's more than you had when I found you. I stared at him, the man I'd once thought was the responsible one. He was the biggest illusion of them all. He spent 12 hours a day networking at golf courses while I spent 12 hours a day managing the household accounts he was too lazy to touch. If he had bothered to look at the mail, the real mail, not the glossy invitations, he would have seen the bright red notices. The warnings, the final demands. The Sterling estate, this 5-acre kingdom they used to look down on the rest of the world, was bleeding. For 3 years, they hadn't paid a single dime in property taxes. Not one. They figured the government was like their credit card companies, someone they could just ignore until a big win came through. But the county doesn't care about your social standing. The tax collector doesn't care about your last name. As I walked up the grand staircase for what they thought was the last time, I felt a strange sense of calm. My modest background had taught me one thing: never spend what you don't own. And for the last 18 months, I had been spending my modest salary, my savings, and my small inheritance on one very specific thing. I wasn't just a house sitter, I was a debt collector. And tomorrow, the bill was finally coming due. I didn't go to my room to pack. I went to my office, the small, windowless den they'd let me use because nobody else wanted it. It was the only room in this $20 million mansion that felt real. The Sterlings loved to talk about legacy. Evelyn would spend hours at charity galas describing the centuries of wealth that built their foundation. It was a lie, a beautiful, gold-plated lie. Marcus's father, Arthur, had inherited a solid real estate firm, but he had spent the last decade treating it like a personal piggy bank. I discovered the first crack in the foundation about 18 months ago. As the house sitter, I was the one who handled the mundane tasks they felt were beneath them. Opening the mail was one of them. While they were busy tearing open invitations to the Hamptons, I was the one seeing the delinquent notice stamps. At first, I thought it was a mistake. How could people who spent $50,000 on a single birthday party forget to pay their property taxes? But then I saw the second notice. Then the third. The Sterling estate was racking up a tax bill that was spiraling out of control. With interest and penalties, they owed the county nearly $400,000. I tried to tell Marcus. I remember sitting him down in the kitchen, a stack of spreadsheets in front of me. Marcus, we need to talk about the estate taxes. They haven't been paid in 3 years. The county is going to put a lien on the house. He didn't even put down his fork. He just laughed, that annoying, condescending chuckle that made my skin crawl. Sloan, honey, stick to the grocery list. My father has accountants for that. It's probably just a clerical error or a strategic delay. Rich people don't pay taxes like you do. We manage them. Manage them? I asked. Marcus, this isn't a strategy. This is a default. Just drop it, he snapped, his eyes hardening. You're starting to sound like your father, always worrying about the pennies. That's why your family stayed in that little ranch house while we're sitting in a kingdom. Focus on making sure the catering for Friday is perfect. That's your job. That was the moment. That was the exact second my loyalty died. If they wanted me to be the poor girl who only understood pennies, fine. I would show them exactly how much power a few well-placed pennies could have. I spent the next year becoming an expert on local tax law. In our state, if you don't pay your property taxes, the county doesn't just kick you out immediately. Instead, they sell tax lien certificates to investors. The investor pays the taxes for you, and in exchange, they get a massive interest rate, usually 18%. But there's a catch. A beautiful legal catch. If the owner doesn't pay the investor back within a specific redemption period, usually 1 to 2 years, the investor can apply for a tax deed. This means the investor doesn't just own the debt anymore. They own the entire property. Free and clear, no mortgage, no previous owner's rights. I had been saving every cent of the allowance Marcus gave me, which he thought I was spending on designer shoes. I had also liquidated the small inheritance my grandmother left me, a modest sum that Marcus had mocked as pocket change. To the Sterlings, it was pocket change. To the county, it was exactly what was needed to buy the tax certificates on the Sterling estate. I bought the first year's debt under an anonymous LLC I registered in Delaware. Then the second. Then the third. Every time Evelyn bought a new Chanel bag, I bought another chunk of her house. Every time Arthur leased a new yacht for a weekend, I paid another year of his delinquent penalties. I watched the calendar like a hawk. The redemption period was exactly 2 years from the first certificate purchase. That date, it was 3 days ago. I had filed the paperwork for the deed transfer the moment the clock struck midnight on the deadline. The county had processed it with clinical efficiency. As I sat in my small office, I pulled out a folder from my safe. It wasn't an eviction notice, it was a deed of ownership. The Sterling estate. Owner, Sloan Sterling Revocable Trust. I heard a knock on the door. It was Evelyn. She didn't enter, she just stood in the doorway, looking disgusted by the sight of my filing cabinets. Are you done packing yet? The movers will be here at 8 a.m. to take your things to that. Whatever motel Marcus booked. And don't forget to leave the keys on the counter, all of them, even the gate remote. I looked at her, really looked at her. Her face was tight from too many Botox injections, her neck draped in diamonds that were likely collateral for a loan she couldn't pay. I'll have my things moved by noon, Evelyn, I said, my voice steady. But I think you should check the mail one last time. A courier just dropped something off at the gate. I don't have time for your errands, Sloan, she scoffed, turning on her heel. Just be gone, we have guests arriving for the weekend and I won't have the help lingering in the foyer. I smiled, a real, genuine smile. Oh, don't worry, Evelyn, I won't be lingering. But I think your guests might find the new house rules a bit restrictive. She ignored me, her heels clicking loudly on the marble floor. She thought she was dismissing a servant. She didn't realize she was walking through a house that no longer belonged to her. I picked up my phone and made one call. Hey, it's Sloan, you can send the inspection team now. And tell the sheriff's deputy we might need an escort for some unauthorized occupants by tomorrow afternoon. The trap was set. The bait had been taken. Now all that was left was the public reveal. The sun rose on the Sterling estate with a deceptive calm. By 10 o'clock a.m., the driveway was lined with luxury subs. Evelyn had invited her inner circle for a brunch to celebrate a new gallery opening, and I suspected to toast to my departure. I stood in the foyer with 2 small suitcases. That was all I wanted from this house. The rest was just expensive clutter bought with stolen time and unpaid taxes. Still here, Sloane? Marcus appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than my first car. The movers are outside. Don't make this difficult. Just hand over the keys and go. Evelyn walked in from the patio, surrounded by 3 of her socialite friends. She looked at me like I was a stain on her pristine white rug. "The help is leaving, ladies," she announced, her voice loud enough for the entire room to hear. She didn't quite have the stamina for our lifestyle. Some people are just born to sit in the audience, not on the stage. The women chuckled, their eyes full of pity and judgment. I didn't flinch, I just looked at my watch. 10:15 a.m. right on cue, a black sedan pulled up to the gate, then another, and finally a white SUV with the county sheriff's emblem on the side. Evelyn froze. "Marcus, did you call the police to escort her out? That's a bit much, even for you." "I didn't call anyone," Marcus muttered, his face paling as the front door was opened by a man in a sharp suit, followed by 2 uniformed officers and a woman holding a clipboard. "Can I help you?" Arthur Sterling stepped forward, trying to summon his alpha businessman persona. "This is private property, we are hosting an event." The man in the suit didn't look impressed. He pulled a badge from his pocket. "County Tax Assessor's Office. And this," he gestured to the woman with the clipboard, "is a structural inspector. We're here to facilitate the transfer of possession for the new owner." The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop on the marble. "New owner?" Evelyn shrieked, her voice cracking. "I am the owner. This is the Sterling estate. My grandfather built." "Actually, ma'am," the officer interrupted, "the Sterling estate was foreclosed upon due to non-payment of property taxes. The redemption period expired 3 days ago. The tax deed has been issued and recorded." Arthur stepped forward, his hands shaking. "There's been a mistake. We're in negotiations." Your lawyers ignored the notices for 3 years, Arthur," I said, stepping into the center of the circle. I pulled the original deed from my bag, the one with the county seal. "And your negotiations were just excuses to buy more champagne while the foundation was rotting." I turned to the tax assessor. "Everything is ready. I've already authorized the locks to be changed on all external buildings and the wine cellar." Evelyn looked at me, her eyes wide with a mix of confusion and pure, unadulterated rage. What do you have to do with this?" "I'm the investor, Evelyn," I said, my voice cold and clear. "I bought your debt 18 months ago. I've been paying your taxes, your penalties, and your interest while you were mocking my modest background. Every penny you threw at me as an allowance, I put it right back into this house. Only this time I put it into my name." Marcus lunged toward me, but the deputy stepped in his way. "Stay back, sir. You can't do this, Sloane," Marcus yelled. "We're family, this is our home." "No, Marcus," I countered. "This was your home, now it's my asset. And as the new owner, I've decided that the Sterling family is a liability I can no longer afford to carry." The socialites were already backing away, whispering into their phones, recording the entire meltdown. The public catharsis was happening in real time. By tonight, the Sterlings wouldn't just be broke, they would be a punchline. I looked at the inspector. "Please proceed with the walkthrough. I want a full inventory of the rented furniture. Anything that isn't owned by the estate needs to be out by sunset." I turned back to Evelyn, who was clutching a pillar as if it could save her. "You told me I had 24 hours to pack my things, Evelyn. I'm a bit more efficient than you. I'm giving you 2 hours. The sheriff will stay here to ensure you don't accidentally pack any of the chandeliers on your way out." "Where are we supposed to go?" Arthur whispered, looking like a ghost of the man he was an hour ago. "The motel Marcus booked for me is still available," I said, tossing the keys to the motel room onto the foyer floor, exactly where Evelyn had dropped my eviction notice. "I believe the rugs are polyester. They should match your new pedigree perfectly." As I walked out the front door, leaving the chaos and the crying behind, I didn't look back. I had spent years sitting in their house, waiting for them to notice my value. They never did. But as I pulled out of the driveway in my modest, paid-off sedan, I realized I didn't need their validation. I had the deed, I had the foundation, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't just house-sitting. I was home.